to the people, which are number one, to have a business model which includes a recurring income element. So most businesses fail because they're very good at selling things, but then when people stop buying them, they have no business. So whatever your business, you have to think of a recurring element. And I've been in many businesses who've said to me, actually, that's quite difficult in our industry. But actually, when you get into it, most industries can actually generate some form of recurring income. And that's the income that keeps you going during, rain or shine. Number two is to...
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and the wisdom of how they sold their first million.
How would you like to make your first million? Today we have Mark Mills, which is an OBE standing for Officer of the British Empire, and is a business sale advisor to help UK founder to set their business for maximum value. After spotting overlooked value as a child selling broken biscuit at school, and then carry out an instinct for funding and exiting companies, this is where everything started for Mark. So tell us, Mark, what are the 5 steps that you recommend entrepreneurs in order to make the first million?
Well, thank you for having me on, Harry. It's a great honor. And I can tell you the 5 steps that I've definitely A, lived by, and B, taught to the people, which are number one, to have a business model which includes a recurring income element. So most businesses fail because they're very good at selling things, but then when people stop buying them, they have no business. So whatever your business, you have to think of a recurring element. And I've been in many businesses who've said to me, actually, that's quite difficult in our industry. But actually, when you get into it, most industries can actually generate some form of recurring income. And that's the income that keeps you going during, rain or shine. Number two is to have a business model that is absolutely bulletproof. So I spend a lot of time with people saying, don't be forgiving of your business model. Ruthlessly interrogate it. Is everything in the model right, from how you charge, how you sell it, your supply chain, etc.? And don't be forgiving. So don't say, well, it's good, but it's not as good as it could be. But I've always had to do this thing, or that supplier is not that good, or whatever. No. If you want to be successful, make your first million within 5 years, your business model has to be absolutely sound. So that's number two. Number three is, if you don't know how, learn how to sell. Because what most businesses do at the beginning, and it's right, is they deal with their family and friends and people they know, and they work on recommendations, which is fine, but that's not a never-ending source. So that invariably will run out. So unless you know how to canvas, create interest, and then close deals, you're not going to have a sustainable business. And actually, for the US audience, you guys are great at selling it. It's more that when I deal with UK businesses, I have to teach them how to sell. When I'm dealing with US companies, that bit's kind of a given. But if you don't know how to sell well, and to people that you don't know, then definitely you need to learn that skill. Fourthly is to charge more than you think you should, because you can always discount, but you can't go up on the price. So actually, if you want to generate profit and you know you're good, don't be afraid to charge more, certainly than the competition. But, whatever you think you can charge, then do, because if you're delivering service, you're delivering service. And then lastly, number 5 would be, don't be afraid to pivot. So I always say to people, there's being in business and there's being in your business. And if your business is not going to work, you've tried everything, it just isn't going to work, we've all had them, then you have to pivot. That doesn't mean you're out of business, you're just out of that particular business. But don't be afraid to say, you know what, this isn't working, I'm going to do something else. And on that note, always have an open eye to what is the next opportunity. Some people just carry on regardless, and actually there's a great opportunity under their nose. And I can tell you one of my stories about that, how I fantastically missed a great opportunities. We all do it. But the point is, don't be afraid to change, because you have to change and refine your business as you go along, or sometimes pivot. And that's one thing that COVID, for example, taught us.
Mark, tell us your story. Why you decide to become an entrepreneur from the beginning?
Oh, well, Harry, it's easy because no one would employ me. So, so I had no choice. I had to work for myself. So when I was at school, I started selling things. My aunt used to work in a biscuit factory and she used to bring home bags of broken biscuits. And I was only 8 years old. And I could not, for the life of me at 8, figure out why anybody would give these away when actually people were prepared to pay. So I was probably the most well-off child at the junior school because I basically packaged the biscuits and sold them. So what I figured out early on was I am much more comfortable ploughing my own furrow. And I think if you've got this as an entrepreneur, and many of your listeners obviously are, if this resonates with your audience, Harry, then believe me, fellow entrepreneurs, you're on the right path, which is this. I would absolutely be frightened to death going to work every day, knowing that somebody could make a complete mess of things above me. And one day somebody came in and put the hand on my shoulder and basically made me redundant. The stress of that would kill me versus fellow entrepreneurs, knowing that if I get up early enough in the morning, if I hustle enough, if I see some clients, if I think of opportunities, if I charge a bit more, if I go back to my existing clients and ask them who else they can recommend, I'm going to make a living. So from a very early age, I decided my destiny was not going to be decided by somebody else. And my destiny is in my hands, and that is the safest place to be. So that is why I think my entrepreneurial journey has been so enjoyable because I've always felt in control, even in the tough times, I hasten to add.
Mark, I want to know how you managed to get a competitive advantage and people actually to pay you for broken biscuits. Because with 8 years old, you figured out that, and we know a lot of people with a lot of with businesses that still they cannot figure out what is their ideal client and what is the competitive advantage. So, can you describe how come with 8 years old you can communicate that value effectively for broken biscuits? You know who's gonna pay for something that is broken, so how you package this with 8 years old and how you actually get money out of it? I'm
I
curious.
suppose that I'm going back a bit in time, Harry, but as I recollect, it's about emotional selling, and I have a mentor. So even when you become successful, I think you should always have a mentor. My mentor is very good at reiterating this with me. So you've got to get across to people. People buy for emotional reasons. And if you can get across to people how something makes them feel. So with the biscuits, I mean, I can't remember exactly, but I seem to remember that it was just the feeling of having a nice big bag of biscuits for, 20 pence as opposed to a small chocolate bar. And that feeling of actually I'm getting more for my money or, value or whatever it is. So whenever you're selling to people, how they feel is the most important thing. So when I sell to people now, I always say to them, what you're going to feel at the end of working with me is very satisfied with my process, very happy with what you've done with your business, very rewarded in what you've done in terms of a monetary sense. You're going to feel very comfortable about how your team has been left in the hands of a new owner if we've sold your business, etc. And people who say to me, that's the most important thing. It's how I feel afterwards that counts. So I think that's a real selling thing. Back to the point about if you want to be a millionaire, learn how to sell. Emotional selling is number one version on the list.
Now, Mark, building a business to exit. Okay, what message do you have for entrepreneurs out there that they are in business, but then when they actually want to exit and sell it, they find out that it doesn't work nothing because all the business depend on them. If they are not around, that is, the business doesn't work. So, what's your message?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Harry. Thank you. So I always say to people, I come across this all the time. What you've got to think about is if you were buying the business, how would you want it to look? And literally, the first thing that people say to me is the truth, which is, well, I wouldn't want it to be completely reliant on me, which it probably is now in many cases. So I then follow that with, okay, so what do we need to do to make it that it isn't reliant on you, which will build better, greater value? And how quickly can we do it? And within that, can we do it profitably? So the point is, most times people say, oh, well, I'm irreplaceable because I know too much and I'm so intrinsic to the customers, the suppliers, the staff, or whatever. And I say, okay, but if you were flattened by a bus, hopefully you won't be, but if you were, would the staff put the keys through the door of the office and put a close sign on? Or what actually would they do something different? And most times people say, oh, well, what they would do is they'd hire somebody to do this part of my role, hire somebody to do that. So basically, you've now just created the mini plan of how to make yourself redundant. But interestingly, if you take some people on to do your role, what that does is that frees you up for probably more profitable aspects of the business, which is going to help to grow your revenue, which means that A, you've now got buyers who aren't seeing the business as dependent on you, and B, you've got greater revenue, which is going to enhance the price. So I'm really familiar with owners where the business is centered around them, but there's a really easy route out of that. It just takes a bit of work.
What is your biggest challenge running a business and how you overcome that challenge?
Gosh, Harry, you should get an award for answering the most difficult questions. So your audience are definitely going to get value out of this. So the biggest challenge in business, bar none, I think, well, there are two really, if I may. So the biggest one probably is just the people thing. But I kind of cracked that a few years ago. And again, our American friends on here will definitely understand this. Basically, I figured out a few years ago that people work in the order of fun, achievement, recognition, then money. So actually, if you don't make it fun and interesting, if they don't achieve anything, if they're not recognized for what they do, and then you don't pay them, they're not going to work for you anyway. But actually, money is the least important thing. And there's a number 5, which is time with the boss. Everyone likes to meet the boss. So I always say, if you work for Virgin Atlantic, at some point you'll probably shake hands with Richard Branson, because you wouldn't work there for 20 years if you didn't meet the boss. Anyway, fun, achievement, recognition, money is farm. If so, people are the most difficult part of any business because they're the moving part, as it were. But if you work with them to make sure it's fun, they achieve things, they're recognised, i.e., you say thank you, and lastly, you pay them, then that tends to overcome the most difficult aspects of the business. The second most difficult thing, if I may add a second one, is that point I said earlier, which is being able to sell to multiple people that you don't know. But if you crack the first part with the people and you crack the piece about how to sell, then your business will fly. They are the two elements that you need to get right. So it's a great question, Harry.
Yeah. And then, Mark, this is the negative connotation about sales, because out of the 500 millionaires that we interview here, everybody that comes, they love sales. They are a big fan of sales. Every time that we talk about sales, you can see smiley and the eyes shine like yours, and you're excited about. But then you go out there and people, no, this is a salespeople. We don't like salespeople. Oh, this is want to sell me something. Why so much negative connotation out there about sales? And whether you interview the successful people, they have a different behavior, different approach. Even you in this podcast have mentioned this a lot of time, and you're right 100%. To make your first million is a sales and marketing exercise. Even if if the product is not good, you can, if you know how to sell, you can sell your first million, right? You might not have referrals after, but you can even you can even sell your product. So what is this dilemma? And in UK, it's even more, I think more, that is even more distant than US. But anyway, tell us, what do you think what's the problem of this?
You know what? It was explained to me a few years ago by a bunch of accountants who I was acting for. And I said to him, you've got to sell to more clients. And one of them literally recoiled in his chair. And I said to him, okay, I understand. Let me guess. And he said, go on. And I said, your parents put you through school. They then put you through college. You became an accountant. They stood with you when you got your degree, holding the award with your flat cap, hat on. And they're really proud that you're an accountant. You're not a salesperson. And he said, exactly, I'm not a salesperson. I said, so I don't want you to become a salesperson. What I want you to become, and I think this is the key, Harry, is I want you to become good at selling accountancy services. So don't think of yourself as a salesman. You just what you do, but you're happy to be out there promoting it. So that sort of mindset shift took him away from. In the UK, we have a terrible connotation with salespeople because everyone thinks of a second-hand car salesperson who sells you a rubbish vehicle and then it breaks down and then they won't give you your money back and all that. That's our perception of salespeople. So I say to people, don't get too hung up. You don't need to be a salesperson per se. What you need to be is somebody who can sell whatever it is you do for a living. And then the other one is to completely diffuse the situation. I've used this many times over the years in two situations. So number one, people sometimes say to me at a party, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a salesman. And they say, oh, right. Well, they're always a bit taken aback because no one ever says that. And invariably they say to me, what do you sell? And I say, well, what do you want to buy? And that's a great icebreaker anyway. But the other one is when I'm contacting customers sometimes, I'll say, they'll say, "What what's it about?" And I say, "Well, I'm wanting to sell to you. I'm a salesman." And they'll say, "Oh, well," and you just say, "Well, it's true. I've got a thing to sell. I'm coming. Like let's all be honest about it." And people often just laugh and say, "Okay, well, what is it you're selling then?" And then you're off and running. So I like to diffuse the difficult part of people not wanting to put salesman. There isn't a business card in the UK that has somebody's name and salesman underneath it. Mine used to have because I used to think it was funny.
Right. With my experience that I have now, right? If you talk to me and you tell me, Harry, what do you prefer? Do you prefer buy a business already working? Of course, I would check the numbers, the client base, and the profit and so on. Or would you like start one business from scratch? I would tell you 100%. I prefer to buy one already working. But this is with the experience that I have now. Having a school, my first business was actually in London. We managed to save over 5 million doing a property business in London. And so, Mark, what is for me, 100 times, I prefer to buy a business and to scale up. So business that is selling for 1 million, scale it up to 10 million and sell it. I think that this is way easier to go from 0 to 1 million, which is actually 500 million. I have been answered the same question that you have so far because it's the most challenging in the journey of entrepreneur. So tell us, starting your own business from scratch versus buying one and scaling up, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You know what? So I probably am the opposite. I'd rather start something from scratch because the good is more
From scratch, Mark. From scratch.
Yeah.
Everything. Oh my God.
Yeah. So if you want to, if you want to ask me about the sort of most successful one I started from scratch was an ATM business, which I found in the US as it happens, but we'll come back to that. The from scratch because actually you can control from the outset, the whole thing. So I've sat around and thought, okay, so I want to call it this. I want to make this the offering. I'm going to charge this. I'm going to use these suppliers. These are my ideal customers, etc. So it's quite a pure play thing to do. When I've acquired businesses, as you've done, Harry, there is a lot of other stuff in there, and sometimes it takes a while to get into that. So I'm not saying it's not a good route, and probably if you want to get further quicker, then acquisitions are probably the way. But the thing is, they do come with you have to come up with the money to start with to buy something, and B, you've got those legacy issues, sometimes are cultural issues, etc. Whereas the pure play, let's start from scratch. I actually think there's a bit of perversity in my personality that I like the harder route sometimes. I like to challenge myself and say, I'm going to start that business and I'm going to make it work. But I think that's the entrepreneur thing, which is we're all really entrepreneurs in part because we want to prove everybody else wrong, aren't we? So, that I think that grit inside me likes it. But you know what? The other thing is they don't all work. So, the ugly bit is if you buy something that's established, it's probably more likely to carry on. Whereas not every startup works. So yeah, there's a bit of a 60-40 probably rather than 100% to one.
Mark, so how you deal with the legacy of culture and even equipment when you buy a business? Because I agree with you, the biggest challenge, because even, in paper, the business can look great. Oh, wow, this business is amazing. But then when you arrive with the company, you find out that the culture, the value of that entity and those employees doesn't match your own culture and your own values. And now we have a disalignment. And it's very difficult to fix this, almost impossible. You're not going to adapt to them because you have your own value, your own culture, your own things that you non-negotiable for you. But the company already have been around maybe 10 years with the different set of rules. I mean, if there is alignment in culture, that would be amazing. So do you actually assess this before acquiring a business, or it's a little bit difficult to assess, right?
Yeah, difficult to assess. I mean, there's a couple of things there. So it's another interesting question. So number one is, do as much assessment as you can, get as much access to people as you can. And also I like to ask sort of questions that take people's defenses down. So I'll say to people sometimes in meetings, look, and particularly one-on-one. So one thing about getting to understand culture is there's a bit of a divide and conquer. So I think you only find out culture sort of one person at a time rather than in a group. Because in a group setting, say you've been allowed to talk to 10 people in the company, somebody will be defensive, somebody will probably not tell you the truth, somebody will just hold back a bit, etc. But one to one, I say to people things like, look, if we were just friends standing in a bar and I asked you to tell me what the culture was like, what would you actually say? And they'll say, the first thing out of their mouth tends to be the truth. They'll say, oh, well, actually, it's pretty bad. We don't do this with a bit of bullying or whatever it is, negative. So that's a good way to get people sort of slightly drop their defenses and give you the truth. But another interesting version of this is that I bought, when I had the ATM business, we bought our fiercest competitor. Now, these guys, I would not have thrown water on them if they were on fire. We hated them. They hated us. The whole company. We hated everybody. Not really for any particular reason. It was just like, we were so competitive and so were they. So they hated us, we hated them. And then we bought them. And that was pretty tricky because the morning I went in and we did it all in secret. So it was like bang, 7 a.m, we bought them. 9 o'clock, I was standing in their offices saying, we've bought you. I know you don't like us, and like everything we stand for is rubbish, and everything you stand for is great, and vice versa. But we're now all part of the same team, so we're gonna have to work together. And that was quite tough. But the way I did it, and this is the key, I think, is I just talk to people a lot. I talk to them individually, I talk to them in groups, I talk to them repeatedly, I talk to them often. I literally spoke to everybody nearly every week for probably the first 6 to 12 months across the board, from the guys out on the roads, the people in the office, to the call center. I just got to know everybody. And I found that I just broke down that culture because I just didn't say, this is our culture. I just kept saying, this is how we work. Oh, you do that better. And I did honestly say to everybody, if you're doing anything better, we'll do it your way. If we're doing it better, we're going to show you how we do it better. And people on the whole pretty much said, yeah, okay, that's reasonable. And therefore, I think I've managed to break the culture down. You can't do it on email. You can't do it by monthly or weekly edicts. You have to physically stand in front of people and chat to them, not at them, just chat to them, ask them, let them tell you stuff. And that's how I think you change culture. Pretty much one person at a time. It isn't easy when there are hundreds of them, I admit, but we all like a challenge.
Mark, regarding the cash machine business, because I'm advising one business now, which is vending machines, right? And I want
Yeah.
to ask you, I want to ask you different your views when it comes to operation. For example, these vending machines or the cash machines, they are businesses that they are not that heavy on operation versus a restaurant, for example, that you need chef, you need employees, you need food costs, you need so are some business better than other ones, easy to operate, and you don't need to get yourself in so much trouble if you don't have to? So what is your criteria approaches in business? Because for me, for example, I like businesses like this, exactly how you described, okay? I want to make the most of it, but with the smallest operation of possible.
Sure. Yeah, you're exactly right. And one thing about an ATM business or a vending machine business, we used to talk about ours, is that the 6,500 machines never were off ill and never went out on strike. The 6,500 machines all worked every day, but not all the team turned up every day. So yeah, if you can get a business model it's got its recurring income and it's not people dependent, and similarly not location dependent is another rule out. So one location for a business is a tough ask because things happen around businesses, etc., and therefore that can be a killer. So that multi-site, multi customer. So you've got thousands of customers using one vending machine rather than a person, so not people dependent, etc., is definitely probably up there as one of the best business models there is. And if you can operate it on a skinny basis now with outsourcing, etc., then even better, because what you should find yourself doing really as the owner of those types of businesses is sort of conducting the orchestra of supply chain rather than necessarily being sort of too intrinsically involved in all the operations. If you're too involved, you're not going to be able to scale that business up. You need to be able to scale it by outsourcing either to your team or to third-party providers, so that you've got no ceiling on your growth, basically.
Mark, when you guys acquired your competitor that you guys hated each other, do you really knew how much trouble you getting into and how much time you had to put into this company in order to make it all work? You knew what you were getting into, or you find out that you have to put more, 3 times more the time that you
Oh yeah,
calculated in order to
ten times more, Harry. I
tell
mean,
us, tell
we
us a little bit more. I'm very interested, Mark, because the problem that we have with companies and culture and everything is that, right? That
yeah,
it's very difficult to, when people have legacy and adapt to the new things, it's like a massive undertaking. So why do
okay.
you took this step? And
Yeah, so I mean, the step to back was a really easy one in the sense of it was a great strategic acquisition. We knocked out our biggest competitor, so our pricing got a lot
Mark,
better.
did they give you a good deal also?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? At the
Because
very
leading
beginning,
with the legacy is
yeah.
huge.
So being honest, at the beginning, it didn't look a great deal, but 12 months out, when we'd done a lot to the business, it was a great deal, right? So I also say to people with acquisitions that they're a bit of a long game or a medium term game. But to give you an idea of, and some of this, hopefully your listeners will forgive me, but that we're all in business, so hopefully I can share a secret with everyone. Uh, but it may not make me look good. The one thing I did do on day one was the chairman, who was also the chief exec, the CEO, basically at 9 o'clock in the morning when I got there, and he was there, and obviously he knew about the deal. He offered to stay on, and I said to him, "It's fine. You're welcome to go." And he was really shocked because he was running the company. And I said, "Look, it's fine because I can take it from here. I know what I'm doing in terms of the company." And he gave me all this, spiel around, well, you need to understand this. And I was like, you know what? You can go. And I didn't say this to him, but the truth was he was the problem with the culture. So as far as I was concerned, even a day, even a week, even a month, that was wrong. I didn't see it with him at all. You can't have two bulls in a field, as they say. It was never going to work. So decision number one may be a bit ruthless, but it had to be done. He got
Well, Mark,
brought.
you didn't even wait a week for a handover or something?
It
Oh my God.
didn't even last an hour, Harry. I may not be proud of myself on that one, but it was
It's a
the
little bit
right decision.
risky.
Well, yes and no. I mean, look, business has got
But you knew
riskier.
the business. You
Yeah,
knew
exactly.
you
I
have a
mean,
similar in and out, right? And when
exactly.
it's a culture thing, Mark, I agree with you.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
about
You've got to.
looking good. If you don't
No,
take that from the root,
yeah,
it gets worse and
100%,
worse.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Maybe
So
if he stay 1 year more, you have to work 3 more years in order
exactly,
to.
exactly. You couldn't be more right. So basically, get him out the door, and some other people who culturally were never going to fit with us, so got rid of them as well. And it was probably a lot more work. But in terms of, there were so many complications. I mean, if you want a slightly amusing story, we'd actually had a massive litigation with this company because they tried to steal one of our biggest customers. So I actually went to court, and in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in the US, we got what's called an injunction against them, prohibiting them from speaking to our customers. Now, the complication was when we bought the business, I became a director of that business, at which I
And they
had an
cannot speak
injunction.
with your company, with your clients. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, but I'd actually injuncted myself effectively because we then owned the company. So it had layers and layers of complications, a complete mismatch in terms of culture. But interestingly, they definitely did some things better than us, and we did some things better than them. And I think that's probably a positive point to talk about is that the meeting of minds. And I've got one good example I can tell you is that's what sort of brought everyone together in the end. So by the time we'd gone through like the integration, we did make some redundancies, but we found people jobs. So we tried to do that sympathetically and effectively. So by the time we'd gone through it and we had a really sharp business, everybody was bought into it. And lots of the people who stayed for many years after certainly I left were from that acquisition. So there was never any um, you know, animosity after the event. But to give you an idea, and I think this is a thing about when I said about pivoting before. So when we were buying that business, we outsourced a lot of our engineering on the cash machine. So when they went wrong to a separate company. And the company we bought had their own engineering staff. And I went round raising the money to buy this company saying, oh yeah, number one, we're going to get rid of all their engineers and just fold it into our existing outsource arrangement. And actually, about 2 weeks in, I decided just before I made the decision to go out with one of the engineers in a van who, I have to say, was shaking like a leaf when I turned up as the chief exec, to go out with him for a day, proper, back to the floor, undercover boss stuff, albeit he knew who I was. And what I figured was he was really committed, but the van he had was rubbish, the vehicle, the tech in the van was rubbish, the way we sent him out was rubbish. So actually, what I did was I came back and said, you know what, if we change those things, I think you guys are going to be better than our outsource partner. So we actually got rid of the outsource contract, gave those guys our whole estate, and we got our availability up, which increased the profitability. So that part about not being afraid to pivot is very key. I could have just
And also
carried on.
reinforce your brand, Mark. If you have the same engineers in the same company, at least you put your logo in the van.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I said that at the time. We ended up with 100 vans with our name on, with advertising on, whereas before our outsource partner got all of that sort of goodwill. So yeah, you're exactly right. There are actually lots of fringe benefits to doing that. But my sort of macro point is, don't be afraid to pivot on a decision of magnitude when, again, you've done the maths, you've done the research, you've taken your intuition, and you say, you know what, that's the right decision, and it was.
My ego, right? When I was young and I started my first business, I mean, we all have ego. Otherwise, we won't be entrepreneurs. We think that we can do better. However, we have to manage that ego, right? And even if you took this company, you said, you know what? Let me drop I know better, and let me go one day with the engineer to see what are they doing, right? So I learned over the year that the more I surrendered that ego, the more it's better for the company, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
At the
And
beginning, you start, oh, I'm the big deal here. Everybody need to do what I say. That's when I was young. That was a long time ago. I used to have hair. And you jump into the office, in London. I remember I used to arrive to this office and I said, well, everybody need to listen what I had to say. And then, Mark, I'm tired. I'm so exhausted because I have like 177 clients. They all want to speak with me. And the team need to run everything to me. And I'm so tired. I'm so angry. Yeah. And going this big ego. Yeah. The moment was amazing. What the first minute when I arrived to the office, oh, I'm a big deal here. Everybody had to do what I said. But after, I'm tired and angry. Yeah, the money's coming on, it's coming in, but I have this toxic environment where out of survival, I had to say to my team, you know what? If you have a problem, bring 3 solutions, pick your favorites. If it works, it works. It doesn't, it doesn't. Don't even talk to me. I don't want to know. And I'm thinking like this, I can sleep. I did it out of survival. And I took my manager, her name was Eva. I said, Eva, from now on you're Harry. She's like, what? Yes. All the tenants want to speak with Harry because, they want to bring a friend, they want to bring a family member, they want to leave early. And they knew that there was someone called Harry that can solve that for them because it's out of the rules, out of the contract, out of what we agree on. But they knew there was a person called Harry that can fix that for them. So I remember the tenant telling me, Harry, if the time that you have available is 4 a.m., I'll call you 4 a.m., no problem. I'm like, wow. They're gonna kick me in that way. So I took Eva, I said, Eva, you talk to them, it's okay. You do whatever you decide. If the mom want to stay the whole month and don't pay, it's your thing. I don't want to know. You pick your... And it turns around, Mark, the whole thing that actually they start to embrace leadership into the organization to the point, true story, that one day I arrived to the office and Eva told me, Harry, go home, travel the world if you want, we don't need you here anymore.
Success, Harry, success.
I did it, yeah. I mean, I remember this is how I react. I told her, Eva, yes. So then who's going to pay the paper for the photocopy? You tell me, if I go, who's buying the paper for the photocopy? And she told me, Harry, we can get our own paper for the photocopy. Don't worry.
We can work on it.
We can.
Yeah, well, so you're right. And so I like you, I figured years ago, actually, Well, the mantra I came up with to sort of rid myself of any ego is you want to be rich but not famous. So actually, you don't want to be that well known. So you just want to be successful. And actually, that takes the ego out. So I sold a company a few years ago, and I was sitting in the car afterwards with the owner, literally going to the celebration, and he said, and we had the press on it. It was quite a big deal, and it got a lot of international press actually, because we sold it to US backed firm, a French firm that was backed in the US, and it was a UK business. So it had quite a few angles to it. And he said, "Do you want me to quote your name?" And I said, "If you quote my name, I'll lean across the car and punch you because I don't want to be on it. Like I'm just in the background. You've paid me my fee. That's fine. You can take all of the ego bit. I don't want anyone to know who I am." And he was like, "All right." I said, "No, I have no ego now because it's an easy way to work." By the way, on that point about delegation, that's a great way you did it. The way I did it, which I found worked for me, was I used to say to people, when you said like come up with three answers and pick your best solution, I used to say to people, if it was your money and your company, what would you do? And they always tell you. It's like, well, do that then, because that's the answer. So just do, if it was your company, your money, what would you do? And they go, yeah, I'll do that then. Yeah, well, that's the
Oh,
right
that's
answer.
great, Mark. Wow, I learned this one. This is better. Wow, it's fantastic.
Well, yeah, so the example I was used because it happened to me. Somebody said, we need a new photocopy. I said, do we need a new photocopy? Could we mend it? I said, what would you do if it was your money? He said, oh, I wouldn't buy a new one. I'd just get it mended. I said, well, there's your answer. And I thought, oh, that's the way to do it. So I've used that a lot.
Yeah.
Delegation in one sentence, you cracked your business.
So, Mark, when do you do realize that this ego thing that we all have, it had to be dealt with, and if we don't manage, it's not good for business. I remember
No,
that if I'm exhausted, I remember those times and I couldn't operate. I was
yeah, burnout.
physically, I remember I was living close to Canary Wharf in London, and I used to wake up and work without stopping, no eating, nothing until 11 p.m. And at 11 p.m., after everything was done, I was calling the Chinese restaurant on the corner, and they were giving me, I didn't have energy to say what I want. So they knew that when Harry calls, the menus over there, they have numbers
Yeah,
33, 34, the Chinese, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
they knew that the next number is that if Harry ordered 33 yesterday, today 34. So I just
Well,
called the restaurant and I said, Harry, I said, 10 minutes is dead. And they will bring me the food. So imagine what I did for my health, so, uh, and all, I mean, I didn't know any better. It was kind of by accident, Mark, accident, survival, because when we are entrepreneurs, nobody taught us, this ego thing and how we deal with it. But I later realized exactly. I think it's very impressive what you did, right? That when you acquire this company, that number one, you get rid of the CEO day one. This is really, really tough. And you didn't do it from the ego time of view. You did
no,
it because you knew that was the best for the company.
yeah,
But also for you, like you said, the driver was shaking what the CEO is doing in my van, and you have the humbleness. Okay, let's sit with you. Let's give it right, and let me try my best to see if we can keep her to see. Um, Take a lot of courage to do that. The
well, yeah,
easiest thing is I'm a big deal, and from now on,
yeah.
everybody had to do what I say, which is very egocentric, but it won't help in the business results, right?
No, exactly right. And again, I used to say to people, still do, if you were in my position, what would you want to, if you were in my position, how would you act? What would you want that to look like? And they'd say, invariably, people say, well, I just want people to talk to me and I want to be able to make my own decisions. And by the way, if I make a wrong decision, I don't want to be, overly chastised for that. I just want to learn and try and get it right. And you say to people, I'm really good at making mistakes. I'm really good at making mistakes. I make loads of them. I try not to make the same one twice, and I try to learn from other people's mistakes, but I'm still going to make them. So I expect you to make mistakes, but what I also expect is when you do A, own up to it, and B, try and rectify it as quickly as you can. And that's all we can all do. And if we all work like that and we're all really honest with each other. So I used to walk into the occasional board meeting and literally hold my hands up and say, I've made a massive mistake. And everyone would burst out laughing. I'd go, no, it's not funny. I have. And they'd say, no, you're just doing that because the culture. And I was like, no, honestly, I've dropped a real clanger, as we say in the UK. And they'd be like, oh, he's just being all humble. I'm like, no, seriously, guys, I've made a real mistake. And they'd be like so supportive. I'd be laughing myself saying that this is great. So yeah, I mean the ego thing, get rid of your ego. I mean, there's no room for them. Nobody likes anybody with an ego in my experience anyway. I mean, be good at what you do and be confident and definitely, when it comes to selling, be the top of your game, etc. But to
And
your
also,
point,
if you're doing a sellable business, right? If you
yeah,
have
yeah.
this ego and everything needs to run with you, zero when you're gonna sell it. There's no value in the
Exactly.
business, right?
Exactly. And I say to owners all the time, we don't want to look like this thing can't survive without you. You want the guy who's buying it to have the ego who says, actually, we think we can do so much more with your business. Because, hey, guess what? They'll pay you even more. So I always say to my
I'm telling
clients,
you, ego is really bad for business.
it is. I always say to my clients, we're going to try and look really stupid. So let's not have any like really intellectual conversations. We want them to think we're buying from these real stupid guys and girls who don't know what they're doing. And the minute we get hold of their business, they're rubbing their hands together. We're going to make a fortune. I'm like, very happy for you to think that because they'll then extrapolate the numbers and think it's going to go like 10x if it was only going to go 5. And I'm like, well, that's fine by me.
That's funny, yeah. That they go there and say, well, if this guy doesn't know what they're
Yeah,
doing, well, we're gonna make so much money. Let's give him a premium.
exactly.
So they send me today.
They can't wait to buy it.
that's
I'm giving
that's
all my
that's
secrets away. I'm giving all my secrets away.
yes. Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a very, very good tip. Great tip, actually. So, Mark, um, why you do what you do? Clearly, you don't need the money, right? Because after these operations that you do, you clearly don't need the money. So why you here? Why you do what you do? Why
I
you
mean,
why you're not in Florida, in Miami, drinking mojito in the cruise and
well,
being on holiday for them?
I do come quite a bit and do that, but actually, it's for two reasons. Well, both serious, but I'll tell you the serious one first, and then hopefully lighten the mood. So the serious one is when it came to selling my own business, and I sold a couple, but small ones. What I found, which really, really annoyed me, and to this day still does, Harry, is that I was the only person in the room that was actually bothered at the end about the price. And I'll tell you for why, because all of the guys I was paying, all of the lawyers and accountants, are all great guys, and I've dealt with them ever since. Right. When invariably the buyer comes in and tries to chip you on the price, which actually is really irritating to me and I don't put up with, nobody else really could have cared less because the guys were saying to me, well, a millionaire, you're still making a lot of money. And I was saying, no, because I still remember, I still know the value of a pound or a dollar, believe me, right? So why would I just at the flick of a pen give away £1 million, say, or $1 million? That is not in my nature. I'm too competitive. And also, if I've agreed something with somebody to buy my company, I expect to fulfill my side of the bargain, deliver them a company in great order and do a proper handover. I expect them to look on their side of the bargain and keep to that, which is pay me the price we've agreed. I don't believe I'm going to let them down and shortchange them, so I don't feel I should be shortchanged. So the thing is, it really, really irritated me that I was the only person in the room who actually cared as an owner. So when I came out of that business and people said to me, so people said a couple of things. So a few people said to me, how did you start that business? Which I can tell you the story if we've got time, because I found it in the US. How did you grow it aggressively? How did you exit? And when it came to the exit point, I'd say, well, my thing is, my passion now is if somebody as an owner is going into that room or going through that process, I'm happy to stand shoulder to shoulder and I will be the only other person in the room that is 100% on your side. Now, to be honest, Harry, the reason is because the way I get mostly paid is because the more the owner gets their business, the more I get paid. I have a ratchet mechanism. So don't get me wrong, there is a financial reward. But actually, even if there wasn't a financial reward, I would happily stand and argue with any owner to maintain the value that they've agreed because buyers do it professionally. And as I always say, I was the only virgin in the room. I was the only guy that hadn't been through that deal before. And oftentimes people I act for haven't been through it. And it is shark infested waters. So my passion is to protect owners. So that's number one, really, why I'm in business. Number two, to lighten the mood slightly, is making money is addictive. So, like, the more you make, the more you kind of want to make. And my wife always says, "No, don't tell anyone that. That sounds really bad." And I'm like, no, but it's true. And anyone on your podcast, Harry, will, I'm sure, understand this. Like, the feeling of just making money and then being able to do things with your family and friends, I think it's great fun. So why would I not want to do something that's really, really good fun that then gives me even more fun when I do something with the product, which is at the end of the day, money? And my wife will kill me if she watches this. So she says, I never tell anyone that. No, honestly, and I told her I was coming on your podcast. So I'm really going to be honest with Harry. I didn't know I was going to tell you that one, Harry, but I said I will be honest, and that is the truth. It's addictive. Making money is addictive. Being successful is addictive, and it should be.
Mark, if someone is in love with this conversation, how people can find you, how this process work?
Oh, well, I'm really easy to find because I had the good fortune to buy a really easy domain name a few years ago. So if you can remember mark.co.uk, that's my UK domain. And you can email me mark@mark.co.uk and it comes straight through to me. And I love selling US businesses for people because you guys are great at the selling piece anyway, as you've said. So, if anyone wants to talk about selling one, then I'm happy to. I'm happy to give advice as well. Obviously, for no fee, no obligation. I just help people. But yeah, if somebody wants to chat to me, then by all means, get in touch.
Mark, this has been a great conversation, and for me, it's a pleasure to have you here. We need more people from United Kingdom in the podcast. Yeah, we love Americans, but we most of them coming from US out of the 500 millionaires that we interview. And very nice to hear someone from UK in the podcast. So, and I think you're great. Keep
Thank
doing
you.
what you do. I find you very happy. And also, when you do business, you create jobs. Society moves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was in part, as I understand it, why I was awarded the OBE because quite a lot of the businesses I've helped to grow have been exporters, so they've been selling goods around the world. So
Mark,
that was
tell us a little bit briefly about the OBE because I know that it's very difficult in United Kingdom to get that.
Yeah, well, and you don't, in all honesty, you never know where it really comes from because His Majesty the King awards X number per year, and it's for services to, in my case, services to business and charity. And it comes out of the blue, and it's a great honor because somebody has to nominate you, and there's a big process to go through. And then you get the pleasure, in my case, of going to Windsor Castle to meet Princess Anne, which is the King's sister, and to be given this award with lots of really famous and important people around you. So it's very humbling standing there with, big celebrities and people who run big charities and things. But, it's a great recognition and it does take you to some very interesting places as well. So I say to all entrepreneurs and all business owners, if you work hard and you get your model right and you do a good job for people, it is staggering where business takes you. When I started my first business and I was literally walking the street selling payphones, that was business number one. I would have never thought I'd be standing in Windsor Castle with my wife and children, having a medal pinned on my chest. So, yeah, it's all good fun. If you've got time, Harry,
Very
there's
impressive.
one.
Very
Thank
impressive.
you. There's one story I would like to share with you because particularly for your US audience, is that okay? It's on the ATM business.
Yes, go for it. Go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so listen, you guys are going to love this because it's true. So when I was 29, I'd never been to the US before. 28, I was actually. Oh no, 29, sorry. And I said to my brother, so we'd sold a small business. We'd done okay. And I said to him, look, all good ideas come from the USA. So let's go to the USA. This was on a Thursday, and let's find an idea. Now our wives thought we were crazy, right? Because they were like, "So you're going to get on a plane and you're going to go and find a business idea?" I was like, "Yes, we're going on Monday." So my brother and I flew to New York. We stayed in this hotel, and this is 1999. It had a big Starbucks in the bottom. We didn't have Starbucks in the UK. Every morning, my brother said to me, we were sitting there drinking a big cup of coffee, reading the paper, the New York Times, sitting on a settee. And he said to me, "This is a great idea. This will work anywhere." And I said to him, "It'll never work in the UK because we're a nation of tea drinkers and no one's going to pay $4 for a cup of coffee." So I sat in one of the best ideas in the world and missed it completely. So never beat yourself up if you miss an idea, right? It happens. But fortunately, it was July 99 and we walked into a convenience store and there was an internal cash machine. It charged me $3 to get 50. And the rest, as they say, is history. We built that business up. But the parts of the story I wanted to tell you is, and this is a bit about
I prefer this one way better than the coffee. Way better, to be honest with you.
So we got the machines live March the 17th.
I had a restaurant and I lost 200,000 pounds.
Oh, that's Harry. We've all done it. We've all done it. So I got the cash machine, the ATM business going, and we got 3 machines live in March 2000. And in the first 14 days, we dispensed about £30,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay? But roll it forward 6.5 years later, when I had an offer for the company, which was about $250 million. We had 6,500 machines, and we were dispensing just under £500 million per month, right?
Wow.
So I go into
wow.
Yeah,
grew a lot.
Yeah. We were in Germany and the Netherlands as well. So it's getting there, 6,500 machines. So I went home and I said to my wife, all confidentially, I said, I've had an offer for the business. She'd hardly seen me, like you, Harry, when you were in London. She'd hardly seen me for 6 or 7 years. I'd hardly seen the children. I said to her, we're standing in the kitchen, and I said to her, listen, we've had an offer. It's life-changing. We're home and hosed. I said, you remember the first 3 machines, 30,000 in 14 days? Now I've got 6,500, and we're dispensing just under £500 million a month. But an offer of 250 million. And she looked at me and she walked slowly to the kitchen window. I can actually remember because I could feel my heart beating in my chest, and I thought, this is the moment where wife's going to say something really profound to me about how clever I am, what a great business I've built, how interesting it all is and all the rest of it. And she looked into the garden and she said, it looks like it's going to rain. Will you go out and bring the washing in?
No, Mark, because I did an interview here with an entrepreneur. He sold over 400 million in his business, right? And then he has a kid, and then he has a moment that that his dad never have time to take him to game because of busy at work, and he's thinking, well, my kid is gonna miss me for the games and things like that. And he told me that took him 7 years to start to adapt to the process, okay, to go back to the family. But you know what he told me? He told me, Harry, the problem is even bigger because now I need to buy my time back for my family because now they are used to do stuff without me. So now I'm like you said, I'm coming back, and they are like, well, we don't need you. We do our stuff without you so many years. So
exactly.
why you want to do?
100%.
We fine without. You're like, what?
I had the same thing. So when I sold out of that business, I said to my wife, after about 2 weeks of taking the kids to school, going to gym, I'd be home by sort of 10 a.m. And she said to me after 2 weeks, you're going to have to get a job or something because you're driving me mad. So I bought an office.
I'm telling you, they go, they're happy without you. Now you went back and they're like, what? It's very funny. Yeah. This is interesting things that happen. Only we can laugh about it. Obviously, the family, and they don't know the level of pressure that we are need to handle every day. We have salary people that depend on us. That we never understand, and it doesn't matter how many times I'm trying to explain it. My dad, I got a degree in chemical engineer, and my dad, even now, his best dream if I find a job, right? So if I go today and say, Dad, I find a job, they're gonna pay me so much money, we'll be the happiest person in the world. He still doesn't understand what I do or what.
Well, you're successful enough, Harry. I'm sure he watches some of these podcasts.
So with the family, even you try, look, this is how they do, this is the blood. Then some of them, they will never get it. And we have to deal with it. Mark, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the podcast.
Really enjoyed it.
For all of you who following the broadcast, next episode of Unstoppable. How brave entrepreneurs like Mark break the world and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.